We have a new topic starting today, and just to give you kind of a picture towards the end of the semester, I think we have 2 or 3 maybe lectures that are supposed to be on motivation, and then that gets us up to, I think, November the 26th. So a friend of mine, his name is Tom Hurd. How many of you know who Tom is? I know some of you must. Tom works for Pfizer. He works with the AMCP group, and some other things. Anyway, he's going to come and talk to you all about, it's really management per se, but really more about your career management. He has a really interesting personal background in terms of where he's been. He was a BS pharmacist like me. He went back and got his PharmD as an external PharmD candidate. He's been one of the few people who, since I've been in pharmacy, has always worked for, he worked for 2 employers. One was a long-term care pharmacy, and one was Pfizer. And Pfizer in particular, he chose to leave the long-term care pharmacy, but Pfizer has had, during Tom's tenure with them, I can't even count the number of times they've restructured, reorganized, and so forth. And he's going to come and talk to you about what it takes to survive in industry if you decide to go that way, and the things that he's done to ensure his career path would be one that was reasonably successful. Super great guy, very interesting to listen to, very laid back. I think you'll enjoy hearing him talk. And that's on I think that's a Monday, it's the 26th. Does that sound right, like a Monday? So, all right. So we're going to talk about today motivation. And motivation, I think, try to divide it up into 3 parts. And the first part is the background, the motivational theories, what's out there, why do they say what they say, and what does what they say mean. And then the second part is some applications. And then the third part is sort of just a fun lecture on how motivation has been applied at SeaWorld. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And so to get started, I want to introduce a couple of cases. Let me go there first. There's 4 cases here. They're each going to have a different perspective, a different learning, like pearl for what we should learn in motivational theory about them. So I want to introduce them first and go back to the beginning and start up. So the first case is your longtime staff pharmacist is Cesar Rodriguez, who's been there about 14 years. Just learned that the new pharmacist you hired fresh out of school is getting the same salary as her. Well, just what's your gut reaction to that? You put yourself in the 14-year veteran position. Does that upset you? But isn't that how pharmacy works? I mean, pharmacists are worth what they're worth, right? You make $57 or $65 an hour, and that's what you're worth. So why should a new graduate make less than that? So these are the kinds of questions that come up. But that's not really what's important. What's important is how does it make the people who work for you or the people you work with feel when somebody with 0 years experience, barely passed the boards, gets out and is making exactly the same amount of money as you are. So we'll talk about that. She's come to see you about her displeasure, so you're the boss. And during the discussion, you realize there are several issues on her mind. You had no idea she was unhappy in her position. All right, so this is the layers to the cake kind of thing. The salary is a big issue, but maybe it's something else that's got her feeling unhappy or unmotivated. And where the motivational theories we're going to look at will help you understand what those might be and then what you possibly can do about it. Because what happens if you give her a raise and say, well, we'll take care of that problem. We're going to give you a $10,000 a year raise. Or maybe what she says is, well, all right, I'll just take away her offer and then offer her less money so she doesn't make as much as you. That's not going to work either. So, but if you just throw money at the problem, generally speaking, it doesn't solve it. So we'll figure out why that could possibly be true. Not to pick on CVS, but CVS has recently worked to transform its image with this name change to CVS Health, and they stopped selling tobacco. So they're doing a lot of things. Give them credit for that. Company is growing and doing pretty well. Has anybody checked CVS stock lately? Does anybody own CVS stock? It was around $75 the last time I checked it. We'll have to look and see. Somebody Google it and see what it's at. One of the top performing regional pharmacy managers, Joe Adendondolo, because of his stature, easygoing nature, everyone calls him Big Tony. Ask any one pharmacist group, they'll tell you the reason that Georgia is doing well with the transition is because Big Tony is a great leader and does all the things he can make the CVS do to make CVS a great place to work, and a company that takes great care of patients. Big Tony lives in Alpharetta, travels 1 or 2 days each week. Been successful. He's slated for promotion to VP of Operations up in, where's that, Connecticut. He has an extensive network of family in Georgia and is involved with his community. He also has 2 daughters in high school. Promotion brings higher salary, stock options, and a required move to the regional office in Connecticut. So motivation-wise, Tony's doing great. He's here in Georgia. Things are jammed up and they're great. What would happen if you tell him he's got to move to Connecticut? No offense to Connecticut, but it's not Georgia, right? One of the current events I was going to do this morning was on the fattest versus skinniest states in the union, and you look at Georgia versus Connecticut, and there are some significant differences that might make him want to move, especially if his name is Big Tony. But the idea is, with this case, we have to figure out why would somebody be motivated to make a move like that? What would be the possible things that would encourage them to want to do it or discourage them from wanting to do it? The obvious things, well, I got 2 kids in high school, they're going to rebel if I move them to Connecticut, but you never know. I mean, that's what high school age kids do anyway, so it doesn't matter if they're here or there, they're probably going to be doing something that's like sandpaper on your brain to begin with anyway. So we'll use motivational theories to begin to understand why what things we might do, whether this really is a reward for Tony or not, and how he might react to it. Case 3, staff pharmacist at New RX Pharmacy. And you've got a great schedule, 9 to 6 daily and 9 to noon every other Saturday. Anybody take that schedule? Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good schedule if you're going to do community practice. So you enjoy the people you work with and you realize there's few opportunities beyond just dispensing, and you hope you get to do a lot more of that stuff you learned in pharmacy school, like various screening, vaccination, disease management, health promotion, and so forth. As a result, you don't look forward to your day at work and think it's time for a change. You decide to talk to the owner about leaving. So in this case, we look and see that this employee, not money, it's not a promotion, it's just they're not getting to do what they thought they were going to get to do when they graduated pharmacy school. Why would an employee not be happy as a result of those circumstances, and what can we do to fix it? Case number 4, not to pick on any company, but problems. Story 2811 is a mess. One issue after another, mistakes, complaints. It's the kind of story that makes you sorry you took on the district manager's position, but you did. So you pull out your notes from Dr. May's management class, leadership, change, metrics, finance, and even a little motivational theory. A lot of topics, no help. So you begin by taking each problem one at a time and identifying the issue, and then grouping the issues together and coming up with the major themes of what's going wrong. Then you see it, there's no teamwork. Everyone's doing the job assigned, but they're not working as a team. You decide to tell everyone if they will try real hard to work as a team, you'll give them all, everybody, a 10% raise. What are the chances that's going to work? Is that going to change things? Yes, sir.
We actually give you a raise to everybody, or only one group? Or are they telling you you're going to get a raise and then not giving you a raise?
Are you that distrustful and pessimistic of pharmacy management?
No, I only know what's happened to me.
So let's assume in this but-for world that but for Walmart, that everybody's going to get a 10% raise. They're going to do what they said they're going to do. Well, I didn't put Walmart in here, but if any of you are Walmartites, you know that 2811 is a pretty famous Walmart store. So anyway, all those little subliminal things that just kind of go like this. Anyway, they're going to get their raise. But with that, knowing that they're going to get the raise, you think it'll work? How many of you think if you got a team that's not working as a team, because you all are well-oiled machines working as teams now, right? You know exactly how to get the assignment done as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, with as little work on your part as possible, right? So, 10% raise, yes, no? We'll see. All right. So, in order to be able to solve these cases and figure out what's going on, we're going to need to understand a lot more about motivation theories, and we can do that. But we're going to try to figure out how to look at motivation from a couple of different perspectives. And in particular, from your perspective, what motivates you to get involved, to do something, to do a good job, to seek to do a great job. When you were getting into pharmacy school, when you were applying, were you motivated to do well in your chemistry classes? To study hard for the PCAT and practice that and take it a few times? Why were you hardworking then? And are you still hardworking now in the same regard? Are you going to be hardworking again when the state board comes around? So these are the kind of questions, from a personal perspective, what gets you going? What gets you to do the things, gets you excited about doing the things you need to do, should do, or want to do? And then look at it professionally. We're still not provider status. Why not? Is the profession not supporting you? Are you not supporting the profession? Is there less motivation on our part as pharmacists to get this because we don't know really what difference it's going to make? Why should this be any different than insurance reimbursement in your mind? And can you get motivated about doing things as a pharmacist without that? So we learned a little bit about how motivation might impact us as professionals. Managers and employees, do you think there's a natural divide there? They have different perspectives on the world and they're going to behave differently. Managers obviously think nobody wants to work hard, everybody's trying to skirt around their duties, and employees are like, they don't pay me enough to do all this. So how can we begin to use motivation, the difference between a motivator and being motivated or being a motivatee? How can we look at that better, understand it, so that we can get more accomplished in our roles as managers and employees? It really was all tied together. It's kind of like when we were taking the communications course. Everything you were taught in there was common sense, and everything that you were taught basically applies to whether you're communicating with patients or your spouse or significant other, or anyone else in the world, really. So the same thing with motivation. This will help us understand why that person that you just got into this huge argument with about something completely unrelated to anything you really care about could hold such a different view than you. And then social. So that applies to that. So here's the definition of motivation. This makes a pretty good multiple choice question. It would be A, B, C, and D would be all of the above. The process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behavior. Is that a good definition? If you understand what goal-oriented behavior is, it does. But goal-oriented behavior is simply, I want to pass management, I want to get out of pharmacy school and pass the boards, I want to get a good job, I want to have a family, I want to do whatever it is you want to do. That's your goal. Goal-oriented behavior is what gets you there. I also refer to it sometimes, if you will, about outcomes-oriented behavior. So basically, you make decisions and you do things based on what you want the outcome to be. So you want to pass the state board, you start studying basically now. So another definition, internal and external factors that stimulate desire and energy in people to be interested and committed to a job, role, or subject, or to attain a goal. Pretty similar. This one focuses more on the factors that stimulate desire and energy, and both of those are important. You gotta want to do it, but you also have to have the energy to do it. You ever have that arise? Man, I really want to study for pharmacotherapy, but I'm just going to take a nap instead. I'm really tired. So the desire and the energy must be present. And you've got to be both interested and committed. So, yeah, I'd like to run a half marathon, but I don't really think I'm committed to it, so I'm not going to train very hard. So there you have it. My favorite, so put a little star by this one, if the question would for some reason say, which of the following is Dr. Perry's favorite definition of motivation? It would be C, goal-directed behavior. Although they're all good definitions. Why do I like C? Because it's short, to the point, and I can spell all those words. So that's good. So the objectives for this particular lecture series would be to re-examine motivation, I told you this already, from a theoretical perspective, apply to practice, and then look at it in a popular application. Just out of curiosity, have any of you ever read the book, The 1 Minute Manager? So it's a super short read. If you're at all interested in management, I highly recommend you just grab a copy or come by my office and borrow a copy. It's a 40-minute read, and it provides some interesting perspectives. We're gonna review it as part of our last lecture. All right, so there's our 4 cases. Of these 4, so we've got Isella, who's unhappy about the money. We've got CVS, telling you might be unhappy about the move, or maybe not. Is it possible Tony's going to embrace that and say, wow, Connecticut, I've always wanted to live in a small, cold place in the north. So, that's possible. All right, question for you. Let's say Tony's making $160,000 now as a regional manager for Georgia, and we offer him $280, almost $100,000 a year, or a little more than $100,000 a year more to move to Connecticut. Is that going to seal the deal? He'll do it no matter what? I know you're all shaking your head because the marginal value of money, given how much you make right now, is a lot. But if you make 160 already, that next $100,000, when you're going to only see half of it after taxes anyway, is not that big a deal. And who knows how much it costs to live in Connecticut? You got a 3,000 square foot house on 2 acres in Athens, Georgia. You might spend $300, $350 on it. Does anybody know how much that will cost you in Connecticut? At least, probably more if you can find it. If you can find it. So, that $260,000 might not get you anywhere. Now, the stock options and other things that they might offer would be other motivation. But really, what's the point? The point is money a motivator? So, most of you are thinking, well, it is for me. And the reason that's true is because you don't make any right now. You're all students. So money is going to motivate you. But once you have some money, once you've earned a little bit of money, how motivated can you be by money? And there's this thing called the marginal utility of dollars. And basically, for every dollar you make, the next dollar is worth less to you. It doesn't mean as much. So when you're making $120,000, $130,000 a year, a $5,000 raise means a lot less to you than when you're making $30,000 a year. Agreed? Okay. So we can use motivational theories to understand why Tony may or may not want the job and what to do. The pharmacist who's not feeling like they're doing all they can do, being all they can be. How do we fix that one? And then teamwork, if people just aren't working together, a lot of reasons why people might not work together, but what can we do about that? So those are the case studies. So we'll come back to these later. And after we learn a little bit about motivation, we'll come back to them and figure out what might be going on. So the theories that I'm going to present to you can be grouped into, well, they're all in the same group, but they can be described by either Maslow, Herzberg, Bloom, or McGregor. And those 4 theories, have you heard of any of those from any courses you might have taken in psychology or anything like that? You've heard of Maslow's needs hierarchy, I'm sure, right? And everything, to me, everything builds off of Maslow. So we'll go over that in just a second. But these theories, basically, each of them takes a little bit different perspective. This is important to remember. Each of these theories takes a slightly different perspective. And to me, they're most meaningful when we understand all of them and think about all of them together from the perspective of how does each one contribute to my understanding of what will motivate my employees to do good work, which means achieve the goals that we have as a company, but also, you've heard me say this a lot of times, how that achieving those goals will make them happy. Because I think a lot of what determines behavior, whether it's buyer behavior in marketing or whether it's employee behavior in personnel management and motivation, it's whether or not people are happy. So, and I think as students, expectancy theory really applies, and I'll ask you more about why that might be true later. All right, so let's remember Maslow. Remember the very basic needs of physiology. So you got to breathe, you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to sleep. And for some of you, I would remind you that drinking does mean water. So, anyway, so physiological needs. If you are a pharmacist making a couple $100,000 a year in your own pharmacy, things are going great, and you suddenly develop asthma, and you are in a severe asthma attack and you can't breathe. But yes, you're supposed to go to a meeting at work. Are you going to solve the asthma problem, or are you going to go to your meeting at work? You're going to solve your asthma problem, because as human beings, when our most basic level of needs are not met, we forget everything above that and we deal with that basic need. So if you can't breathe, you will do whatever it takes to be able to breathe. And I think that's pretty intuitive. So bottom line, though, is that this applies to every level. It's easy to understand when it's about, can I breathe or not? So how does that apply when I get to these other levels? Well, safety. What's safety mean? That's you've got support around you. You have a feeling of security. That's important to people. Feelings of love, belonging, friends, family, having a partner, having a social network. And what we find is that people many times fulfill their social needs at work, just like some of you might fulfill your social need by being in this classroom with other pharmacy students. When you have a job, your social needs will be fulfilled by the things you do at work. I know a lot of pharmacists that deal with the public all day long. And when they get home, the last thing they want to do is go hang out with a bunch of people. They want to go home and they just kind of want to be by themselves and just have a little bit of peaceful time. So their social needs get met at work, therefore they don't need as much social interaction outside of that. But when you take away that social need, even if you're existing at a higher level, you're going to drop back down and want to try to fulfill that need. So if you work by yourself in an independent pharmacy and you don't have any people around you, you're not able to meet your social needs at work, so you're going to strive to meet social needs. And this is what Maslow's theory just basically tells us. That at whatever level we're operating, once we've met a need, new needs begin to emerge. So once I've got physiology and safety and love all taken care of, then I start to want things like achievement and respect and self-actualization. So what is self-actualization? That's the be-all you can be. And the self-esteem is just more feeling good about what you do, feeling good about the things that you do, the levels that you've attained. So the pharmacist who wasn't happy because she wasn't able to do the things she learned how to do at pharmacy school probably is having problems between self-esteem and self-actualization. So if you told her, well, I'm sorry that you're not happy with your job, therefore you're fired. She's now dropped to a different level of need, correct? She no longer has safety needs. She doesn't have a roof over her head because she can't pay her mortgage. So is her outlook on her pharmacy job going to be different at that point? Yes. So so Big Tony, he's doing great. He is self-actualizing and self-esteeming all day long because he's doing a great job down there in Georgia. But when we tell him to move to Connecticut, we have attacked a more foundational need that he might have for safety and belonging. So when that happens, his motivation will be in jeopardy too. So this kind of, Maslow's needs hierarchy can just about explain anything when it comes to motivation. The problem is it doesn't give us any insights on how to fix things. And that's why I like using all of these together so that we have a better understanding. Looking at McGregor, X and Y theory. So basically what McGregor says is that there are two basic approaches to viewing employees and employers. And Theory X managers basically say, everybody hates working, it's boring, and if you didn't have to do it, you wouldn't. That in order to get people to do things, you got to force them. You have to threaten to fire them, or worse, to get them to do things. And they would rather be told what to do than to be left alone to figure out what to do. That the things that motivate people have nothing to do with all that Maslow stuff. It's just give me more money and I'll do my job. Or please don't fire me and I'll do my job. And then last is that, and these are just examples, there are other Theory X opinions of the world, but basically people aren't going to be creative. They're not going to try to figure out and solve problems on their own. They just want to be told what to do and tell me what the rules are and I'll get the job done. So that's the Theory X manager. Would you characterize Theory X as pretty pessimistic, pretty negative view of the world? I would. Theory Y manager, on the other hand, says that people need and want to work, and they might actually even like it under certain circumstances. That they will direct their own behavior. They'll do the things that people need to do to be successful with their job. And that they will take responsibility on and do a good job, basically, if the conditions are right. And then they're going to be motivated by their own internal drive to do well and to achieve. Not necessarily because you're giving them a raise. So this one, the motivation, Theory X, Theory Y, people are motivated by money, people are not motivated by money. How does that apply to pharmacy? How does it apply to Big Tony? How does it apply to the Isella who's getting paid the same amount of money? We're going to learn how to tie these together. And then in terms of creativity, in these other aspects, this last aspect, People are creative. They will have interesting and new solutions to problems if you give them the opportunity to do it. So how many of you know a Theory X manager? Probably everybody does. And how many of you know a Theory Y manager? Some of you may. Which one would you rather work for? Theory Y. So naturally you say Theory Y, and then I say why. And you say, yeah, that's what I said. I said, no, I mean why? Yeah, that's right. So it's who's on first here. So anyway, if you have a Theory Y manager, are they more likely going to be somebody that wants to work with you and develop common goals, motivate you through higher level need achievement? Yes. Would a Theory, and a Theory Y manager be just the opposite? They're going to make sure that you understand that you're operating at a basal level, and they know that. And the way they're going to motivate you is by threatening to take away your safety and security needs, by firing you, and then you don't have any income, and then you lose your house. So, what does that add to or take away from Maslow? So Maslow is all about this pyramid. We build on the various levels of need. So Theory X and Theory Y are basically working on self-esteem. Theory Y is working on self-esteem and self-actualization, whereas Theory X basically tends to threaten physiological safety and love. So they're working on different ends of the spectrum. Are they mutually exclusive? Are they just two endpoints that can't be reconciled? No, I think they can be. Oops. So lastly, well not lastly, but close to next to last, the Hertzberg theory of motivator hygiene theory. And basically, Hertzberg says that there are two basic ways that we look at motivation. And he says that there are these things called hygiene factors, things that must be present. Get this right. It's critical that you understand this. There are things that must be present, and their word is a double negative, in order for you to not be unhappy. Things that must be present in order for you to not be unhappy. And then motivator factors, which are things that must be present in order for you to be happy. So when we look at the hygiene factors, without hygiene factors, you're going to be very unhappy. But motivating factors, if they're present, you could be motivated and have job satisfaction. So hygiene factors, and again, pay, status, security, good working conditions, benefits, policies and administrative practices. What I really mean by that is that the workplace is fair. People get paid what they're supposed to get paid given their years of experience, and there's not gender or race differences in how we pay people, and we reward them for good behavior. As well as interpersonal relationships. Anybody ever have difficulty with a coworker? If that ever happen? Is that possible? No, y'all are so easygoing and easy to get along with. That would never happen, would it? I can tell you so many stories over the years of when I was working more full-time as a pharmacist. There's always a head tech. There's always one technician that you cannot live without because they make that store run, but the order's never messed up. The store's always spotless. Everything that needs to get done is getting done, and it's because that head tech is doing everything they need to do. And you just can't live without them. And they always turn out to be mean to the other employees. And all the other staff is constantly complaining about them, but you're kind of stuck because they're so good you can't live without them. So that touches on this interpersonal relationship. Sometimes it can happen that you have good, smooth relationships, and sometimes it happens that you don't. Would you all agree that without equal pay, you can't have job satisfaction? Do you agree that without equal recognition of like title, staff pharmacist versus clinical pharmacist, or some other title, that without your status being properly recognized, you can't have motivation. You're not going to have job satisfaction. You're not going to live in fear of getting fired every single day. So security, where the air conditioner actually works at the pharmacy, instead of the fans blowing hot air around all day, or the rat problem that they've had is being addressed, or you no longer get fleas when you go in because the owner brings their hunting dog in, or whatever it might be. And so you look at all these things and you say, all right, without these, I can't be happy. Would you agree with that? Each of us has our own tolerance level. So there are some of these things that you can live with more than others, but for the most part, if these are not all at least partially met, if there's not at least some level of equality in pay, then we're gonna not be happy. It's gonna be impossible to motivate us. It's kind of like when you have a barrier to communication. You're not able to counsel that patient until you've removed that communication barrier. Then you can move on. In motivation, we've got to make sure that the hygiene factors are met before we can try to motivate. Make sense? Okay. So the motivating factors, again, hygiene factors relate mostly to lower order needs on Maslow, and motivator factors refer to mainly higher level things. So meaningful work, challenging work. Is the difference between meaningful and challenging? Well, filling a prescription is a meaningful activity, but it's not that challenging. Doing an MTM is a little more challenging, and doing a consult with a doc on a patient that's been on an MAOI for the last 19 years and suddenly has started to fall into hypertensive crises to discuss potential options and maybe treatment alternatives is a little more challenging. Recognition of accomplishments, feeling of achievement, increased responsibility, opportunities for growth, and the job itself. So, you agree these are high level? Yes. And if they're present, are you more likely to be motivated? And the answer is yes, unless what? Unless the hygiene factors are not being met. So all the motivational theories up to this point basically teach us that lower level needs are important to be met before we can branch out and try to meet the higher level needs and fulfill employees' need to self-actualize and to have self-esteem. To feel good about themselves and what they're doing and to feel like they're doing all they can really do. If you got employees like that, they're doing a great job. So all three of those basically, you can look at them as having two levels. Now, the last one is called expectancy theory, and this one's a little bit different. And the analogy that I'm going to give you deals with, remember Greenspan? Y'all remember Dr. Greenspan? We'll see if you remember. You don't have him anymore, do you? He's had him in pharmacology, right? So I have to draw upon your memories, which I know will be difficult. But basically, we'll get to that in a second. Basically, people behave in a way because they're motivated to pick one behavior over others based on what they think the outcome of doing that's going to be. I'm going to study because I think the outcome will be I'll pass this class and then I'll get to be a pharmacist someday and make a lot of money. So Bloom's expectancy theory, based on this theory about what we do is going to be based on what we expect to happen later, has three parts. It has expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. So expectancy we just talked about. Instrumentality is whether you think that is going to be something that you can accomplish. In other words, if I study hard for Greenspan, I'll pass this class. And then valence is whether that outcome, passing the class, is good for you or not. So that's basically the three things. And these are, and when it comes to expectancy, there's three things that control expectancy. And I'll just touch on these lightly because they're not critical that you understand. I think the concept of expectancy is what I really want you to understand. Does my employee think that, do they expect that if they get the order in by 6 o'clock every night so that we get guaranteed delivery tomorrow morning by 10, is that going to have a good outcome for them? So you can think about that as just as a business problem. Why should I care if the order gets here by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? I don't come on to work until 1. The order will already be put away by the time I get here. Of course, you would never think that way, would you? So, well, here's the deal. If you don't get the order in by 6, then the order doesn't get delivered until 2, and then it's going to be yours to put away. So your expectancy is that if I get the order in by 6, it benefits me. So self-efficacy, goal difficulty, perceived control, these things all have an influence on will the achievement or will the performance of this activity result in some desired performance goal. And they're going to be related to lots of different factors. This is self-efficacy, goal difficulty, and perceived control. All right. Instrumentality, as I said, the instrumentality is the belief that a person is going to get a reward if the expectation is met. So basically, it's the recognition, the promotion. It's low and the reward is the same for everyone. So this is why people argue that, no, everybody on the Little League baseball team shouldn't get a trophy. It should just be the team that won. And so it makes some sense from this perspective. There are plenty of reasons why it does make sense to do that. And this theory would tell you, no, don't do that. Because if everybody gets to pass this class, everybody gets to take the boards, and everybody passes the boards, and you don't have to study, you just get to pass because you showed up, then you're not going to engage in the behavior of studying and being a better pharmacist and knowing more about drugs because of this issue of instrumentality. Now, to a certain degree, it requires trust. So many times I've said to you, this is a great thing to know for the test. Do you believe me when I tell you that? Or do you think I'm trying to lead you astray? You probably believe me, right? I mean, I haven't really lied to you before, not on big things. Little things, maybe. Like, oh, the test is so easy. Don't worry about it. But, so yeah, it takes a little trust. Instrumentality is an important part of it. It's just one of the three parts of this that all of them together will help us to have a better perspective and a better handle on what we're really going to be talking about in terms of is somebody going to be motivated. And then valence. Do you value? All right, so Big Tony. Likely he's not, to me, likely he's not going to value moving to Connecticut because it's going to pull him away from family, it's going to be a higher cost of living, and they're going to be hard pressed to pay him enough money to make it worth his while. They can do a mortgage allowance or something like that to help him out because his new house is going to cost 10 times what his old house did. But it's based on, this valence is basically based on our values, what's important to us. And so if being close to his family is the most important thing in Big Tony's life, he's not going to want to move to New England. But if money is the most important thing to him right now, because he's still trying to pay off student loans or whatever it might be, then it may be that you're going to have some ability. This what happened, this next little scenario here, a pharmacist friend of mine that some of you may even know. Born and raised in St. Simons, you went to pharmacy school and took a job with Merck as an MSL. Your territory required little overnight travel. You did not need to move from the area you love. You've been extremely successful, and as a result, you're promoted to a national position which requires you to move to West Point, PA, near Philadelphia. That's where I went to pharmacy school. I wouldn't go back. Not at all. Thinking about your motivation to take this new position, what is the valence of the promotion? And you can't answer that without knowing more about this person. But just based on the way the scenario leads you to think, does somebody who's born in St. Simons want to live in West Point, PA? If you look out your window in West Point, PA in the morning, what do you generally see? Do you see factories and interstates and train tracks and manufacturing facilities, or do you see what you see when you look out your window in St. Simons? So, would you want to move? Would you want to move? What's the valence? Valence is low. It doesn't help me achieve my goals in this example. Now, let's twist it a little bit. This is somebody that's got a big family, and it's highly dysfunctional. And he or she has been wanting to get the heck out of St. Simons for the last 35 years. Would that change the valence now? And how do you know these things? Well, because you know your employees, you know that you have rapport with them, you know what's important to them and not. So you don't offer a super successful sales rep who doesn't want to move a national level job unless you're making allowances for them to still be able to keep in touch with family by allowing them to work remotely even and just show up at corporate for whatever meetings you need them there for. Especially since it's a sales job or an MSL job, there's very little downside to you of allowing that kind of a thing as an employer. All right, so let's look at pharmacotherapy. So motivation is equal to expectancy times instrumentality times valence. So expectancy, the perceived probability that the effort will lead to good performance. And that's based on self-efficacy, goal difficulty, and perceived control. How much control do you have over pharmacology, test questions, or the right answers and so forth? What about how hard of a goal is that? Pretty hard. And self-efficacy, can I do it? Am I capable of doing this? Is that really something that I can do? So think about pharmacology and think about Dr. Greenspan and his tests. How would you rate expectancy? Low, middle, or high? So it's a trick question. Some of you are thinking, well, I did great in that class, so I'm going to rate it high because I know I can study hard and do well. Others are saying, it didn't matter how hard I studied in that class, I still got a 53, and that's ridiculous. Okay, so I'm not going to study because it doesn't matter if I study or not, I get the same grade. So expectancy could be whatever. Instrumentality. What's the probability that that if I pass pharmacology, that I'm going to pass the board someday, graduate pharmacy school and pass the boards. Well, it's definitely a positive on instrumentality. And then valence. Is this going to be valuable to me? So you multiply these three together, whatever your subjective evaluation of any of those are, and that gives you your motivational force. It gives you the force directing specific behavioral alternatives. Now, there's a lot in here that we can learn about motivating an employee. If you design people's jobs to be so hard, I need you to fill 800 prescriptions a day with 0 defects and counsel at least 400 of those 800 people every single day of your life. And you're going to be working a 12 or 13 hour day because we come in an hour early to get stuff set up for the day, kind of get the day, make sure the vials are stocked and all that. And yes, I have the pharmacists do that so they don't lose touch with the day-to-day operation. Is that a difficult role to achieve? It could be, could well be, especially if you don't have enough help in other things. Instrumentality and valence, we can look at it the same way. So we can use this Bloom's expectancy theory to kind of highlight for us how we can manipulate the aspects of the job that are important so that they will be most likely to satisfy the needs of employees when they try to achieve those goals, creating a higher motivational force. In other words, people will be more motivated if the job is doable, if there's a good level of correlation between my doing a good job and achieving the outcomes I want to achieve, like getting a raise, getting a promotion, whatever, and that the probability that doing that is going to lead to those outcomes. So the moral of that story is if you're teaching a really tough subject like pharmacology, you shouldn't make the test so hard that most people have a hard time passing it. But then there's those that would argue that point. So, there's just a thought question for you. If we were still doing writing assignments in the communications course, I'd ask you to answer this question. How strong is your motivation to provide excellent care for your patients? And then we can analyze it in terms of all these different factors and see why you may or may not be motivated to do just that, and that's to provide excellent care for your patients. So here's the take-home point for today. We get a couple minutes, about 4 minutes early. If we take Maslow and his lower level, the 3 bottom rungs of the triangle, and its higher level, and break that down and say those are lower level needs, and self-esteem and self-actualization are higher level needs, and we're going to build on each level of need, and when we achieve one, we just go to the next one. So when you've got all the lower level needs met, you're going to look towards self-esteem and self-actualization as the things that will drive your future behavior. Theory X and Theory Y takes that and divides it up a different way, and just says people basically don't want to work, and people only work to earn a living, and you're going to have to basically coerce them into doing anything you want them to do because they're not going to go freely. They're going to try to shirk their duties at any junction and not do a good job for you, versus Theory Y that says just the opposite, is that people are wonderful and no matter what I do, they're going to seek to do the best job that they possibly can. And if we turn McGregor sideways and overlap Theory X with the lower 3 level needs and Theory Y with the self-esteem and self-actualization, they actually make a lot of sense. And the same thing for Hertzberg with the hygiene factors and the motivator factors. Take them all together, and we realize that it takes a lot of basic building blocks to make sure that people aren't unhappy with their job. It takes more than just the basic building blocks to make them be motivated, and so that they will be happy with their jobs. But we look at them all 3 together, and we can begin to understand motivation, I think, a little bit better. Is motivation easy? Nah. Is it impossible? No. But honestly, when you understand the way people think and you understand what effectively motivates, it becomes much easier to do. So this is where we will start on Friday. We will pick up with the 4 cases and we'll go through each one and talk about how these theories apply to actual decision-making at the pharmacy level. And the case studies, I have questions on the exam that are based on the case studies, so you'll want to be actively participating in the discussion of those cases so you're familiar with everything. Any questions for me? 2 minutes left. Okay, well, I'll see you all on, wait, this is Friday. I'll see you all on Monday. Have a great weekend.
This is your dissertation, actually.
Wait, I'm confused. Do we have to do anything?
It's only 16
Wait,
minutes.
whatever you said.
I'm not sure. You'll be there back in 16.
I feel like there's a quiz that we're missing. Because I have this quiz, and I know I did poorly on the quiz today.
I mean,
But I feel like there's a quiz that's not showing, so we had more than... Didn't we? I don't think so. We haven't had very many. I'm mad I missed that